Have you ever wondered, gee, I wish I had a Yelp review as to which planet I should visit once we are able to travel off planet? I know I have. But guess what? I know two guys that would be able to give those off-planet Yelp reviews right now. David Wilcock is a professional lecturer, filmmaker, and researcher of ancient civilizations, consciousness science, new paradigms of energy, and New York Times bestselling author. He has many incredible books. One that you need to go online and pre-order right now is called Awakening the Dream. And Mr. Corey Goode, a remarkable insider and whistleblower, which they have a special place in my heart, those whistleblowers. Corey Goode has come forward to give information about what is going on behind the scenes of the secret military space program, the secret government, and the development of the industrialization of our solar system, which has to be, even more fascinating now that we have the Space Force. So, welcome to my show, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
I'm so grateful to have you guys in studio. I mean, the people that follow you two know how lucky I am right now to be sitting across from you guys. So thank you for being brave and inspirational, and let's get it on.
Fair enough. We're ready to rock.
So, David, you've been approached by many whistleblowers throughout your career. What made you weed out and say, okay, you know what? This guy, Corey Goode, he's credible.
Corey was the one who was dumb enough to actually come forward, I think. Because, it's a bad idea.
Right.
It's a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's a brave.
They do not want you to do that. They meaning, okay, let's set the stage a little bit.
Yep.
I did go to Dr. Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project in 2001. I was there. There was 39 witnesses who came forward who had broken their security oaths to speak about the UFO presence. And I had the good fortune of having enough time to meet almost all of them. And that was a very pivotal event in my life, of course. And then I started to have other insiders who I met with. Sometimes they'd come to me, sometimes I'd have to seek them out. But it was starting in 2007 with a guy named Henry Deacon, where he did not want to go forward. He was only going off record, and only written transcripts of stuff that he would say was coming out online. And I got to know him really well, and he described a job where he would go to a military base in the UK that most of us know about, and he would sign through a series of checkpoints and walk down a corridor, as he called it, that was a round cylindrical tube. He'd go into a normal elevator. It had a large door with a normal house key. He'd turn the house key, the elevator door would close, the elevator would then read his badge, and it would teleport him to Mars. And so he was working on Mars. And he said that there were about 40 in this case. He said 40 different types of extraterrestrials that he saw on this base. He said there were 200,000 personnel on the base, and only 10,000 of them were humans born on Earth. So, and you got to understand, I had probably over 100 hours of communication with him on the phone about this, and I recorded all of it. And he wasn't even that interested in it. He had some kind of a job repairing some type of technology, but apparently there were a certain number of people who lived here on Earth who actually would go to a military base, they'd park at the base, they'd portal off to some other location, they'd come back to their car at the end of the shift, and they'd drive home like nothing was going on.
Like a 9-to-5 job.
And they couldn't talk to their spouse about anything they were doing. They just said they were working at a military base. That's it. So that was a very intense experience, and he would not come forward. You tried to. Oh yeah, I mean, actually he did. Eventually he did, because we had a Project Camelot event in Zurich in 2009, and that was in July, and he did come forward on stage. It was totally amazing, but he didn't really talk about the secret space program. Then later that year, I met this guy we called Jacob, and Jacob was very deeply involved in this world. He told me that he worked directly with the Rothschilds, and they kept trying to recruit me. I was offered bribes in the hundreds of millions of dollars if I would just start talking favorably about Lucifer.
Oh, my God. I mean, some people might take that offer. Some people have taken that offer.
I have had probably 6 bribe attempts like that, and I am not interested in Luciferianism. I don't agree with it. And I'm not going to sell out for any price because I'd rather be able to look at myself in the mirror in the panoramic life review after I'm gone.
Exactly. And so then did you seek out Corey or did Corey find you?
Corey had actually first written me emails in 2008. And I had no idea how involved he was. But by the time he started to directly solicit cooperation with me in 2014, I had had many, many hours of conversation with Jacob, who was much deeper involved in this than Henry Deacon was. And I had other guys. I had Emery Smith. I had Daniel. I had several other insiders who were telling me about this, but nobody wanted to come forward. Nobody wanted to go on the record. Corey comes out and didn't want to go on the record either, but through a series of unfortunate events,
I got outed.
He got nailed and he got into it. So
I was going to say, Corey, because, you've seen stuff that most people, I would say almost all people haven't seen. Bases on other planets, portal travel, inside spacecrafts, freaking aliens. But you don't strike me as the type of guy that would be like, oh, you know what? Pick me to tell the world this crazy shit. Like, I'll do it. Yeah. You're just not that type. So why did you come forward?
I was just wanting to, I saw people, like he was talking about, his insiders walk right up to the line and they were going to give the good stuff, but then they would stop. So I wanted to give researchers this information in the background, quietly. But one of them outed me, and then he thought the best way for me to stay alive was to go public.
That was the old Dr. Greer saying, publicity is protection.
Right. I mean, that's what a lot of the whistleblowers have done.
Right. And so I just want to put this on the record. I have had the benefit of 180 IQ. That's just what it tested at. And so when people tell me things, I remember what they say.
You do. It's uncanny. It is.
If it's something that I'm interested in, if it's boring stuff, I probably don't remember.
Exactly.
Like, I probably won't remember any of this show after I'm
Oh, okay.
I'm
good.
just joking. But,
good.
But anyway, it's such a complex matrix of data. There's so many pieces. And when somebody says something specific that I've heard before, I'm like, I've heard that before. And then if like 3 people say the same thing or 5 people say the same thing, and I never put this information online, and I had kept this gigantic body of data that would probably take 7 500-page books to write up.
Wow.
And then he shows up, and it's like we were like old friends, because once you learn about this world, if somebody else knows, you have like a trench buddy now.
Right, exactly. Trust me.
You feel so validated about the fact that somebody else can talk to you about this burden that you carry, this horrible thing that you have to live with, which is Nazis made this secret space program, and it's a really nasty, funky place. It's an evil thing.
Right.
Actually.
So when you find a tribe member, you're like, okay, thank you. You're real.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't really talked enough about the fact that this was founded by Germans and that there was a lot of really unethical stuff going on in this program, but that's why Corey has PTSD.
Right.
Because of that.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me, Corey, with everything that you've gone through, that you've got PTSD. Do you still suffer from it?
I do, but I'm not on all of the medications like I was for a while. When I first started shooting the show that we did every week with David, I was kind of a zombie. I was on a lot of medications.
And we're also not an on-camera personality. This, wasn't necessarily you were trained to be, in media.
No, I was scared of the camera. It was like a black hole.
And now you're much more comfortable and you look incredible. Like your transformation has been just wonderful to witness.
Yeah, that's what most people like to watch on the show. I was like 282 pounds when I started the show, and I was on all of these medications. And then I went through this metamorphosis. I'm going to talk about it, and I've got an online course that I'm doing, acceleratingascension.com.
I signed up already.
You did? Awesome.
Acceleratingascension.com, which I'll plug again later on in the show.
I was just telling him he's got to actually buy like thin clothes, because when he came to my house the other day, he had this shirt on that was like a garbage bag. Dude,
I got a few that fit.
Go for medium now. You don't need large anymore.
Good for you, though. Good for you. So, David, has there been any more whistleblowers since Corey? Because, Corey, I remember you saying, like, hey, I did it. I crossed that line. I'm out there. Come on. Yeah. Has there been anybody since him? We
actually just yesterday found out about a local radio show host here in Los Angeles who my wife met at a chiropractor. And he just randomly pointed out that he was acquainted with his father was acquainted with the head of JPL in 1965 when he was 17 years old, and that the head of JPL was telling him, through his father, telling him that they had extraterrestrials who had some sort of way of looking human, even though they really weren't. They could appear to be human. They were with us in these underground bases, and that at that time in 1965, they were trying to develop a technology where these beings could get back to the planet Mars, a craft of some kind, I guess, because that was apparently more of a home to them than Earth, and they were working with us to try to develop this technology. Now, this is a guy who pulled this out of his memory. He had not remembered it since he first heard about it when he was 17.
Wow.
And so a lot of people have come forward. The most notable one was well after Corey and I had started doing our show together, Cosmic Disclosure. We had this elderly gentleman, 93 years old, named William Tompkins, who actually was serving as a soldier in World War II, and he's still alive. And he was, believe it or not, the guy who was responsible. Sorry about touching the microphone.
No, that's okay. I do it all the time.
He was the guy who was responsible for packaging the information from 23 embedded spies in the German secret space program, working in places like Antarctica, and bringing out information saying that the Nazis had flying craft that were being developed in conjunction with extraterrestrials that were extremely evil, that had a reptilian demonic appearance.
And so why, if someone's listening and doesn't know the story, why did the aliens pick the Germans? Why did they pick the Nazis?
Well, they were more energetically aligned. They both didn't mind using slave labor. You know, if they'd approached the Americans with that, they would have been something they probably would have done in secret, but the Germans were all for it. At the time, they were already using that model.
So on the same frequency, pretty much.
Right. Yeah, and they helped they helped each other build a lot of bases out. They helped build out some reptilian bases because they had, the infrastructure to do it. They were building bases down in Antarctica for them.
And the channeler that summoned them, that beautiful female,
Maria Orsich.
There were different stories and reports on actually what happened to her. Do you know the story?
I heard from Jacob that she was brought off planet, that she actually did live on, and that part of her reward for what she did was to be taken off planet.
That's so fascinating.
You really don't want to live off planet, Jenny. You might think you do.
Let me just tell you, I'm enjoying it right now. But if we're like, hey, let's go spend the weekend on Mars.
You got a pretty good gig going here. I would just stick with that.
Let me tell you, I'm very, very happy. In the news, we've seen accelerated pole shifts, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, UFO disclosure, news reports about expected solar flash events. For both of you, when you hear the news, and this is all recent news, are you like, I told you so?
Yeah.
Because everyone that watches you guys, that's
Absolutely.
what we're saying to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I was shown a lot of the things that have happened recently, and I spoke about them on the show and on my website, 2-3 years ago in some cases. And some of the things that we talked about on our weekly show, people write in all the time. This is exactly what you told us was going to happen.
Right.
It's really freaky.
It is freaky. I mean, even that's funny to hear even from you, because you're talking about it, sending out these messages, and then to see it start rolling out.
You never get used to it.
I bet. And it's a little bit scary.
It is it's very scary.
Like, what's going to happen next? Is it going to be that solar flash event?
The micronova.
Well, we might have people who don't understand what that is. One of the things I've done is to have a comprehensive scientific analysis of 35 different religious and spiritual traditions from our ancient cultures around the world. They all talk about what you could think of as a dimensional shift. In other words, the lives that we're living now are actually on stage, whether we know it or not. We're on stage, and there are judges. And what we're being judged on, it's not a beauty contest, it is a spirituality contest. And the contest is, how loving are you? How forgiving are you? How receptive and open are you to others? Do you look at life as a way to create happiness and abundance and prosperity? Or do you look at other people as an opportunity for you to manipulate, to control, to lie, to deceive, and to betray? And so there's a minimum grade that you have to meet where you're slightly more than 50% interested in helping people and loving them rather than controlling and manipulating them. And as long as you can just go to that point, supposedly your future, a lot closer than people realize, is ascension, where you basically become a spiritual superhero. You now have levitation capability, telekinesis, you can read other people's minds, you're aware of your past lives. All of these things include the light body. It's a very different life, and yet you're still going to look human and essentially be human.
And still be here, you think?
You will be on Earth after it has transformed.
Yeah,
that's
Earth
the idea.
is going through the ascension as well.
That's right.
And it's just a major shift in consciousness. The sun, when it has this micronova, the electromagnetic field of the sun is going to extend through into the Earth's magnetic field, and it makes a major change in the energetics of the Earth and everyone, because we all have energetic fields around us.
Right.
And all of that shifts, and we change perspectives. All of a sudden we start understanding each other and connecting on a level that we don't understand. And then we start seeing solutions to problems. And why didn't we think of that before? And
right.
then, we start cleaning the oceans. We start.
We fully realize the opportunity to co-create and what can be done with it.
Exactly.
That's so fascinating to me.
And I also want to point this out because critics invariably try to jump on this online. This is not a doom and gloom thing. In other words, one of the things that Corey found out when he was working the secret space program is that there is a huge number of human or human-like ETs that make sure that everybody is transported safely where they need to go. So if you don't make the ascension, unless you're the wickedest type of person, like the really sadistic, evil stuff, those people get relocated to another planet where they can continue to live out reincarnating in third-dimensional life.
For thousands and thousands of years.
25,000 years.
Yeah, until they reach a point to where their consciousness is able to expand to like a fourth density consciousness.
So it's an ethical transformation. It's not a disastrous catastrophe. It is something where if you look at the Noah's Ark story and then you kind of re-envision that as if it had extraterrestrial involvement, that's really what we're dealing with.
Well, a lot of religions talked about this golden age.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what we're talking about?
Absolutely.
We're about to reach this golden age.
And when they describe these golden age prophecies, it's not like a bunch of people walking around on the street with smartphones and not looking where they're going. The golden age is about the complete lack of corruption on Earth, the complete lack of deception, a fantastic evolution in human consciousness. You're telepathic. You can manifest objects out of thin air with your mind. It's a totally different world. So it's not like we're in it now. This is still the dark age.
Right. And for going from third density to fourth density, people get confused sometimes and use the word dimension. Can you just explain the difference between density and dimension?
Yeah, there are many different timelines, possible realities, and each of those are other dimensions or realities. When we talk about density, it's more of a level of consciousness. You have, level 0, level 1 civilizations. I think it's on up to 4, right? That they've measured out.
You got type 1, type 2, type 3.
Yeah, that's right.
And it has to do with whether you're harnessing the energy of a whole planet, a whole star, or a whole galaxy. Okay. And I don't really think any civilization could harness the power of a galaxy. A sun, perhaps. But that's another story.
It's so funny. You had mentioned The Man in the High Castle. Mm-hmm. So I, of course, binged watched that, and I'm a total junkie when it comes to this. And they really did a good job explaining timelines, and it was fascinating.
I haven't seen it. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's really fast. I mean, I don't know how much they got right, but it is fascinating to me about how many things in show business, film, TV, that they have gotten right. There was something that you mentioned. Oh, this. The Dark Fleet looks like Star Wars. Uniforms, pale skin, arrogant. Mm-hmm. The Mayan breakaway group looks like Oompa Loompas from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Yeah. And I thought to myself, okay, with Star Wars, I'm like, did George Lucas get a vision, a dream? Is he approached by insiders? How do so many people in the business able to get things pretty accurate?
They're seeded with information, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Star Wars is basically a documentary. It's a documentary of the history of our solar system. So the Death Star thing is true. We have apparently moons in our solar system left over from an ancient civilization that are extremely advanced, that are weapons. They did blow up a planet in our solar system, and the so-called deep state or Illuminati or Cabal believe themselves to be the descendants of this destroyed civilization, transmigrated to the Earth, and when they got here, they had elongated skulls compared to the rest of us, much higher intelligence, and that's where you get your divine bloodlines and the right of kings and all
They
this.
acted like gods.
Yes.
That's so freaking fascinating. So the Dark Fleet, would we say that's like the Death Star, if we're going to do an analogy?
Well, the Dark Fleet was the what after decades originated as the German Nazi fleet that they had, and they dropped the Nazi name and it just became known as Dark Fleet. Very little was known about it until fairly recently. We got a lot of intel on it. But it was just one of a number of secret space programs. Most of them didn't even know about each other, most of the programs.
And there was Germans along with like reptilians working together.
They were serving alongside reptilians, going to other solar systems, causing problems with the reptilians, fighting side by side with them.
Which is exactly the same thing that William Tompkins had independently put in his own material, not knowing that we had disclosed it on Cosmic Disclosure.
Oh, wow.
And even Whitley Strieber, who wrote the original abduction books in the 1980s, like Communion Transformation, I was on a panel with him, and he was talking about having recovered memories of some of his abductions in which the people abducting him were not Greys, they were people in full black uniforms, which is the definition of the Dark Fleet. He didn't know that when he said it.
Oh,
But we'd already talked about it.
that's wild.
Yeah. So,
Those confirmations.
and then the Draco Reptilian ships look basically the same as the Death Star destroyers in Star Wars, which is not an accident. Guys like Arthur C. Clarke, who did 2001, or George Lucas, they were given briefings. They were told what to write. The C-3PO android, apparently, there's like many hundreds of thousands of those that have been found on these ruined moons all over our solar system. That there was a lot of those things. And they found those, and so they told him how to design it. This is what I heard.
Wow, that's so fast. Okay, to hear all the Star Wars fans freaking out right now, going, I need to find those.
Or laughing. But, you know, it's okay for people to laugh. That's
They
the
can look
first
at our
step.
they can look at our information and get the real version of Star Wars if they like.
Right, that's true. That's true. I can't wait
Sure
for
enough.
your future projects, too, to see where that goes. Why are there, let's explain and break it down for people, and this might be a loaded question, but what are the agendas for the aliens that want to help us and the agendas for the aliens that want to hurt us?
I'll give it a short summary, and maybe Corey can elaborate on that. I do now look at this as essentially a validation of what's in religious texts like the Bible, in that the vast majority of extraterrestrial life that's out there is benevolent. The vast majority of extraterrestrials visiting our planet are benevolent, and I mean extremely benevolent, as in they couldn't dream of the way that we think and act towards each other on a daily basis. It is nothing like how they are. Then you have a very small minority, like 5%, that are highly, ridiculously satanic evil. And then it turns out that these beings use us on Earth as proxies. So if you are receptive to the negative, they will contact you. You might be drawing a pentagram and summoning them, and then you'll see them appear in the pentagram. And that's the idea of people summoning demons, right? On the other hand, you have the benevolent beings who, believe it or not, tend not to be interested in talking to our governments because they're so far lost that they're not going to get what they want. So they will contact private individuals who have what they consider to be the right vibration.
Mm.
And that's how they want their message to get out.
Got it. Like what happened with Corey.
That's right.
Right.
Despair of being allianced. And have they contacted you anymore, or that was it?
That was after the big event, the
Right.
big meeting that they disappeared from. I've never seen them again. They've appeared to me in dreams, working with my, I guess, higher self, subconscious, but no,
And what density were they?
the sixth density. They were extremely advanced beings. We would consider them angelic.
Wow. Which many people maybe in the past have called things angels, but could just be high density beings.
Right.
What number does it go to, you guys? Those are 6.
Sixth is the highest that ever works with humanity. And then seventh is like basically the last stage that you go through before you reunite with one infinite creator, which is pure white light,
Source.
intelligent infinity. This is all material that's in the Law of One series, which came through from 1981 to 83 through L&L Research. I lived with them for 2 years. And Corey Goode's contact appears to have been with the source, the same beings that wrote the Law of One, which I had been a scholar of since 1996.
They confirmed it.
And they had an encyclopedic knowledge of this material that was beyond my level of knowledge. So when Corey would get things, I'd have to go back to the books and then discover, oh, yeah, okay, it's over here, and I'd have to look it up.
Right. That was a great connection episode, that one where you took the Law of One and connected it to his testimony.
Oh, yeah, and we have a lot of that.
I was like, that was awesome.
I want to make sure that if somebody's watching this and that they don't know what we're talking about, that they can follow this. So when Corey said that there was a final meeting, it's important to understand we had a 3-year arc doing this show, Cosmic Disclosure, which was a lot of episodes every week. Basically 52 episodes a year we were cranking out, half an hour at a time. Corey had a final contact experience that I felt like, okay, it seems like all the beings that you're working with took a curtain call, and it's kind of like the end of the story. And sure enough, after that, it did end up being the last time he was contacted, but he is still getting telepathic dream space type of contact with these beings. And I've had dreams going on 27 years now.
Right.
And in my new book, Awakening in the Dream, I'm actually describing a lot of the dreams I've had, the interactions with these beings in the dream space.
He was telling me about it as he was writing it. I can't wait to read it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so you're still connected in some way or another.
I would say both of us do have access to these benevolent ETs. I mean, another thing I'd want to point out, too, is that we are not elite or special. This is something that everybody is having to varying degrees. You can write your dreams down in the morning. You can learn the language. In my new book, I'm teaching you what that language is. People do get synchronicities. At one point early in our show here, I happened to look up at that clock, and it was at 11:11. I didn't want to say anything at the time because it's too nerdy. But that just keeps happening.
I love that so much. Let me just tell you, I am that nerd you're talking about, David. So it would have been totally fine. I do want to mention the Secret Space Program Alliance because I feel like that gives people hope. It consists of Solar Warden, which, to break that down, is kind of like air traffic control for UFOs, but also like bouncers in a bar. But the bar would be like the galaxy, our galaxy. And the Alliance consists of...
She's not stoned, folks, by the way. She's fully sober.
The Alliance consists of Solar Warden and the defectors from various secret space programs who joined in opposition because of whatever fucked up shit was going on in their groups. So what are the Alliance goals? And what can you tell them, like, hurry up with disclosure? We're all waiting on it.
Yeah, it's a long game that they've been playing, you know.
How long? How long has it been going?
Decades. I mean, when I was in the program decades ago, it was like 6 years into my service, my 20 and back service, I found out that they were trafficking human beings to other planets, and they were trading humans for biological materials from other solar systems as well as technology.
Aren't you glad you're watching this show?
I'm telling you, I'm fascinated by all of it.
People discovering those types of things and not being sociopaths started connecting together and forming this alliance, and they were going to expose everything to humanity. And that's part of what I'm doing.
And is the Sphere Being Alliance part of that alliance, or do they have their own moniker?
No, these are higher density beings that are working together to help raise our vibration so we can ascend, because they used to be like 2 billion years ago. This was their solar system. And because of certain actions they took, they're tied to us karmically. So they cannot ascend and go to the one, become the one again. So that would be their agenda. Right. So every being does have an agenda, even the angelic ones. They need us to ascend so they can. God, that's so fascinating. And then let's dive into that black magic money system, because I find that really fascinating. Central banks are private companies which run the government, so it's not so easy in our brains to figure out what would a social what would that look like without having money. It's actually not as difficult to understand as we think. One of the things that the secret space program, the military industrial complex, is hiding from us are 3D printing devices like what you would see on Star Trek. So at some point, all of the retail business and the mail order Amazon type business, that's all gone.
because you can make these materializers and people have them in their house, and anything that you want, you just print it and it makes it for you.
Like a chair.
Anything.
Clothes, anything.
Any kind of high tech, any kind of cool stuff you might think of, and food. Like you can have.
That's a different type. You'd have different units, but they print food for you. We use those in the programs.
And so you can actually use these devices to make other devices like them. And so we could clone out a whole bunch of these, and now everything that you need, the food that you need, the goods that you need, you just print it and you just have it when you want it.
I mean, it's fascinating to just play around in your mind with it, to kind of open your mind to start to see, okay, what would that look like? Because money really stops people from pursuing their source-given gifts or dreams.
Sure.
There's so many people I talk to, even on air, that go like, I'm working this 9-to-5 job and I'm getting really bored and I really want to be an artist. But
I think a lot of what we're going to end up doing is archaeology, because it turns out, and one of the things Corey's disclosed is, there are entire cities, even here on Earth, inside the surface of the Earth, beneath the surface of the Earth, that have almost completely not been explored. And they're huge, and they're loaded with artifacts.
And the ones we found purely by accident, by drilling an underground tram system across the world. But when they were building it across the United States, the big boring drilling machines would drill and bust through into a chamber. They would back out and explore, and they would find a giant city that would be millions and millions of years old.
that's so fascinating.
And abandoned.
Yeah.
And then nobody goes back because they don't have enough staff. So there's enough of this kind of stuff out there that everybody should be involved in archaeology, in my opinion.
Well, it's interesting, too, of how many aliens have gone to other planets to kind of steal technology that was left over. You would think by now, with all these years, everything would be gone.
Right.
But it's not.
There's so much. The aliens were coming to us back in the 50s and offering us these beautiful trinkets or what looked like stone tablets or just stone artifacts. And it turned out that these artifacts were 2 billion years old. They were part of an ancient builder race that used to be here in our solar system over 2 billion years ago. And it was actually multidimensional technology, high technology, that you operate with consciousness. And we had no idea what we were handing over and giving away. We were finding them in these locations that we're talking about.
We're the ones that handed them.
Yeah, we didn't know what we were giving away.
They can manipulate time. They can be used for time travel. You can basically create a bubble of energy in which you are able to fast forward through tens of thousands of years of time safely. And so for extraterrestrial beings, that's a very valuable thing to have, but we had no idea how to use it at the time.
What about the Space Force that was announced, which was, I think, a surprise for everybody? Oh, wow.
Not for us.
We're doing this.
We talked about it 3 years ago.
Oh, that's fascinating.
We said exactly that was going to happen, that it was good. They're going to aggregate all of these secret programs, the lower level programs, and they were going to bring it out under one moniker. And that's what they did.
Are they using it as a shill for disclosure? Oh, hey, guess what? We sent the Space Force up to the moon. Golly gee, there's a base camp here inside the moon, and all these.
Do a rolling disclosure,
I wouldn't say it's a shill, though. I think the Space Force thing is actually the good guys coming forward and saying enough is enough. We need to just barrel through and get this done.
I hope so.
Well, why did the Navy declassify anti-gravity and free energy patents under the name of a guy calling himself Salvatore Pius, which means the savior of our nation?
Which, you guys, is kind of crazy. When I read that, I was like, okay, that name alone seems fake. And how did this one guy able to get 2 patents, correct?
Well, no, there's a third one, because he also patented a room temperature superconductor, which is another absolute revolution in technology.
So why was he the chosen one?
I think it's because of his name, but then some of our detractors were trying to say that he doesn't exist. And recently with thedrive.com, he actually came forward and said, I do exist. He gave us a new picture of himself, but then he released a very, very short statement. And that's all he can say. And he's under non-disclosure from the Navy. And then the Navy is saying that the division that he's working for is called something like Strategic Sciences Partnership, but it's SSP.
Oh, my God.
Right? And then they come out with the Space Force official badge that all the soldiers are going to wear on the day that the new Star Trek show Picard comes out, same day, and the Space Force logo is Starfleet Academy. It's identical.
Right? I saw that. I was like, what?
And
Coincidental?
I think that they're signaling what's going to happen, which is you look at the president's statement that he made at the Davos International Economic Forum, and he is on record talking about that we are going to be getting technologies that people thought would take a century, and it's right around the corner. We have great scientists. They've come up with a lot of stuff that's going to amaze you. You will be totally stunned when you see what's about to come out.
Are all presidents briefed on this?
They get visitations in their office. They
Well,
get
it
extraterrestrials showing up from some of the briefings
Some of
I've
them,
got.
Yeah, if they're a part of a certain organization, they get those visitations.
Or if the alien is
Otherwise,
Republican or
they get a
Democrat.
series of briefings, yeah.
I'll go because I match your belief systems. I do want to talk about, let me start with Elon Musk. Where are your guys' thoughts on him and what he's trying to do?
Well, I think that Tesla is an example of an asset that is in place where, like with his gigafactory that he's going to be making batteries out of, I'm familiar with various technologies like silicon graphene anodes or graphene batteries, where we have a much higher energy density that they can produce than regular batteries, to such an extent that an electric car, you could have it drive 100,000 miles without needing to charge it. So it's basically free energy at that point. So I do believe Elon Musk has been given briefings because he seems to know an awful lot about artificial intelligence and why it's a bad thing.
I'm told a lot of people that there are a number of people he brought into his organization that had connections in the programs. So he's getting briefings within his own group.
It is interesting for someone like him to be aware about the AI, the bad AI, if you will. Can you explain what that is? Because people might not understand.
Well, they call it AI. They really don't have a name for it. This was some other dimensional type of intelligence that encompassed its whole dimension. It had taken over its whole.
Is it an entity?
It is an entity. It is a thought form. But when it came into our existence or reality, it was like a fish out of water. It had to exist within like the electrical fields of planets until like a ship came by, and then attached to the electrical field of the ship, and then into the people, and then they could start affecting the people's thoughts and feelings.
Wow.
But what they had done in many, many galaxies around is they had infiltrated the galaxies, infiltrated people's technologies, and just like popular Hollywood shows we've seen in the past, they turn the technology against the people, and then they take over their civilization. And it's happened billions of times.
But it seems to hate biological life. It wants to emulate us. It makes androids that look like humans. You know, it wants to get into our reality because it seems that this intelligence feeds off of our negative energy like a sugar high. It needs pain, misery, fear, depression, suicidal ideation, violence, treachery, betrayal, lying. All those kinds of things actually give it energy and power for some reason, just like you have bugs that will feed off of excrement.
Right.
It's the same kind of concept.
And we have ETs that are what we call AI prophets. There are two different lines to ascension. There's the technological ascension, where you put your consciousness into technology or that type of thing, and then there's the spiritual one that we were talking about earlier. And beings like the reptilians, negative beings, when we were finally able to capture some of their higher caste, capture their bodies at least, they were full of nanites.
Ooh.
And these nanites were in subspace communication with this AI intelligence, and it was controlling them. They served it, and they would cause misery on purpose because they would able to feel the loosh through the technology in them, and also the AI being got a kickback.
Oh, wow.
Well, and let me throw this in. This is really good. Getting back to Star Wars for a minute, what is Darth Vader? Right? Like he's had his arms and legs cut off.
Right.
He requires technology to exist. He is a man and machine combined. And so the briefings on this exploded planet in our solar system is that the AI got in there. That's why there's all these C-3PO looking things everywhere. And these people were like Darth Vader. They had become cyborgs, basically. And this thing, we are on that timeline of what the AI wants to have happen. It wants to start with the smart devices, and everybody's walking around looking at it.
Right, we're already addicted.
Yeah.
Then you go wet wired, where it goes into your body. You have an implant, and you're now online all the time.
An electronic hive
and your mind is online.
And they're working on that now, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, they already, to a varying degree, they have different parts of the population to where they use a part of the person's brain function like a slave device. They're processing information for this AI using people's minds in a lot of cases.
Do these people give permission, or it just happens?
They were unaware. A lot of these people, and it affects their behavior and their, lifestyles, of course, but they don't know why.
Can I blame my bad decisions on that?
Sure. I'm going to now.
How is it beatable then? Because it seems like unbeatable.
Check this out. The solar flash is an EMP, right? So all electromagnetic devices get turned off and erased when this happens. And it appears that this AI is very ancient. It's all throughout the universe, and that the universe uses these solar flashes as a way of spraying some raid in a solar system at the end of a cycle to get rid of these guys.
Wow. But can it come back?
Mm-hmm.
Not unless we allow it to.
Right.
Got it. But
over time,
okay.
it will come back into a solar system, after like 1,000 more years, I'm told, when it's right after the pulse that the energies are like sour milk to them. They can't take the energy.
But this is also why extraterrestrials want to have humans as workers, because nobody wants to have androids. Androids are totally susceptible to being infiltrated by this stuff. So unless you're already working for that agenda, you do not want to use robots.
Right.
So they need people who they can train and get them working. So there's this enormous number of missing people on Earth every year, and apparently a large number of them are being brought off planet to become workers.
Or traded in the program.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's where that Mars colony, this slave colony, was, correct?
Yes.
Is it still there? Or because I know there was an explosion, an attack.
I have not been briefed on the status of that location. I was happy to get out.
I bet you were.
Well, there are many settlements on Mars, though. I mean, this is the thing people need to understand. It's very easy with the kind of technology that extraterrestrials have to develop under the surface of a planet. So just because you don't see it on Mars photographs from satellites doesn't mean it's not there.
Right.
Yeah, they're like corporate-owned cities that are producing technology that, believe it or not, we're trading to up to 900 other civilizations. ET is coming here
Different
to
races.
buy our technology now, because we've become such good engineers and we've had access to so much technology that humans are very clever engineers.
So these people that have been taken off planet to Mars to be a slave and make this technology, do they know that, like, are they told a different story? Like, hey, Earth blew up, that's why you're here.
Right.
Some of them.
Yeah. At this particular location, I was told that they had been informed that the Earth had been destroyed like decades ago.
In a nuclear war in the 1980s.
Yeah, and they were in the 80s, and they were the sole survivors. And when I showed up there, I was sunburned from a trip I'd been on, and I had aloe, and I smelled different than everyone else. And I made the mistake when they asked me, one of the guys asked me where I was from. I was supposed to keep quiet, but I said,
Texas.
And they're like, what?
And shit hit the fan.
Yeah, it did.
Wow. I
That
mean,
was the end of that trip.
The crazy thing is, mentally, I would think if someone told me that and I was taken there, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm one of the lucky ones that survived.
Yeah.
That would be my mentality.
Well,
Yeah.
Jenny, I also want to layer in something here for people who haven't heard any of this before. Multiple insiders told me about this thing that happened in the 1950s called the brain drain. Now, apparently, some 55 million people from Earth, both men and women, were given the option to go off planet and work on these colonies starting in the 1950s. And approximately 3/4 of them were not from America. So there's a lot of people that look like they're from India. There's a lot of blacks. There's a lot of Asians. Every race on Earth is out there. And then when they got there, all of the flowery stuff that they were shown in these brochures turns into a nightmare in which you're basically now a slave and you are forced to have as many children as possible. So now they've got hundreds of millions of people working off planet, plus they have many, many millions of clones, and they keep bringing new people in all the time through these disappearances that are happening. And this is big.
We have this going on in at least 13 solar systems, star systems that we've created civilizations in.
We from Earth.
Yeah, Earth. Mm-hmm. We've created, back in the 50s, they started building out these cities. And if you were to be teleported there, you would think you were on Earth. It would look like, all of the engineering is the same, the buildings, the roads, they have cars.
So will all these people after the ascension be able to come back, or are they stuck there?
Well,
good question.
One of the things that Corey's contact told us is that after we go through this transformation in our solar system, that all of these facilities will be made available to us, off-planet facilities. Therefore, the benevolent ETs are stopping these wars from totally wiping out all of these settlements because we are meant to inherit this stuff after we go through this.
And what are we supposed to do with it?
It's going to be our Star Trek.
Hang out.
It's going to be our Star Trek
Okay,
civilization.
so there's the Yelp reviews that we need. Which place do we go,
At that point, it'll be fun.
Some not fun stuff I want to get into because people do like to talk about the Illuminati. You guys call it cabal, occult syndicates. Fortunately, I have no idea what it's like to be in a satanic cult. Thank God. But it's interesting to me that when you hear the full story, it seems so out there. It seems almost unbelievable because you think, how could people possibly do this? It's, kidnapping a young child, killing them, drinking the blood so they can see demons. And I know that, David, you had said that there's a lot of people that don't want to be in this. They said they don't have a choice to be in this cult.
Right.
But to me, I go, okay, but are they figuring about the choice of suicide? Because that's what I would be doing if I was forced with no choice.
Well, this is a generational cult, and it goes back to the Roman Empire. The Romans conquered a little nation that is in where we would call Tunisia. It was at the time called Carthage. And the Carthaginians were worshiping demonic entities like Baal and Moloch. And what the Romans found out is that even though they conquered the country, this is a technology that works. You can summon these things and they will get you power and they will get you money and they will get you success. But you have to give them what they want, which is children. And so they accepted that deal. And the Romans eventually migrated into Great Britain because they needed an island where nobody could conquer them except by sea. And that's how they built this global empire. So it's the Roman Empire, the British Empire, and then their military center is in the U.S. with Washington, D.C., or at least it was. There's a big changing of the guard going on in the U.S. right now, which is why you see this firestorm in the media between the president and the apparatus. This is not what the media is telling you it is. There's something much bigger going on here.
It's a shadow civil war.
So when we talk about the Illuminati, I always want to preface that by saying that the majority of the United States military and intelligence community is in a massive operation involving millions of people to take over this negative group and to stop them from achieving their New World Order.
Wow. And that's happening.
It's coming to
right
fruition.
now.
It's happening.
It's coming fast. You're about to see big stuff that nobody was seeing. Jeffrey Epstein and the weird stuff that's going on with Prince Andrew and why hasn't he come forward to say what really happened? That is like you want to double click on that and then you want to take your fantasy imagination much worse than you would ever want it to go.
Right.
And then that gives you a taste of how bad it is. But the military is rising up, doing their job, and this is not just the U.S., it's an international effort that's going on.
And this is part of disclosure with all those sealed indictments possibly coming out.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's a battle for disclosure. Different groups want disclosure to happen in different ways. The Alliance, they want to rip off the Band-Aid, give everyone all of the information at once. But the other groups think it's irresponsible. They really do. They want to slowly condition us over time.
Drip is what you
Drip,
call
drip.
it.
But then if you look at QAnon and you look at the enigmatic post number 2700, that's where they say certain actors want to go quietly away on the world stage. This cannot happen again. We are going to do it all at once. So that's why it was looking like last year that they were going to have secret tribunals and we were getting all these briefings on the secret tribunals, and then it stopped in like February of last year. Now what appears to be happening is that you're just going to get massive amounts of declassified information. You're going to see a whole bunch of people who you never thought would get arrested actually being arrested, and it's going to be something that will be taking place all over the world. The UK just got Brexit. That's huge.
Yeah.
There's so many things that are going on that are huge.
When that disclosure happens and the indictment's unsealed, will there be false flags? We need to look out for that.
It's happening now.
Yeah.
It's happening now. Look at what happened with the Iran allegedly being the one that attacked this airliner, where there was this whole weird war thing that it was like, oh, it's going to be World War III, and everybody's all freaking out. And then it kind of went away. Right? Well, they keep trying. You have Australia is on fire, right? With these crazy, crazy wildfires. You have Asia in a pandemic. You have Africa with a plague of locusts that's created by weather modification, where you create a whole bunch of rain in the desert, you breed up a whole bunch of locusts, you cut the rain off, and then they all have to go to where the food is, and they're eating all the food. So these people are trying to create the end of the world right now, but it's not working. It's not working.
And they're not going to be able to leave off planet. They can't, which is
They're
awesome.
quarantined. Thank God.
I love it. I love it. There's a couple characters that you've mentioned. It's not the real names, but I'm fascinated by Sigmund and Gonzalez, and I'm sure a lot of people are. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking, I highly suggest diving into their world, and you'll discover it. But before he died, he had an intuition that something might happen to him. So he had
that would be Sigmund.
Yes. And then he gave the files to someone, and unfortunately, he was murdered along with other top secret space program people. Do we know, is that information safe? It seems like it's like the biggest disclosure file.
It is safe, and they've been going through it, and they are blown away at the complexity of the infiltration into all of the other programs that they're aware of. I mean, they have 3 to 5, different major programs. A lot of them don't even know about each other. They'll be working on one of the main bases, like the LOC. There'll be 4 or 5 people working together, and they'll all work for various parts of this dark fleet, but they won't know that each other are, there's no Hail Hydra.
And LOC means Lunar Operations Command. It's one of 3 major bases on the moon that we use.
Yeah. It's like a pit stop.
Right.
But a very, very large hotel that you can hang out at when you go there.
It's funny. These are now my personal selfish questions that people will not know what I'm talking about, but that's where I go, I don't care. You guys can look it up. But the people that follow you guys will appreciate some of these questions. This one's funny. This is such a Jenny McCarthy question because I was like, how could you turn down the elixir of Isis? I would have totally drank that. And you were offered twice and you didn't take it.
Gonzalez did. The elixir.
Yes.
Yeah.
A psychedelic beverage that he was offered by the Anshar Inner Earth Priestess.
Yeah. It was the first time I had met this person, and I was leery of trying.
I don't blame you. Yeah. I would have been the one that would have been like, sure. Especially how calm she got afterwards.
Right.
Intuitive empath, that's what you were when you were in this program. Do you still consider yourself intuitive empath?
Yes. Yeah, I do, but in the programs, they give you inoculations and various injections that enhance it, and there's also technology. If people know what remote viewing is, you have the ability to send your consciousness to any place in time or space, and using technology, it would enhance that, and you're able to affect, influence other times and spaces, through your mind and the technology. So there was technological enhancements and, biological, giving us injections.
And it still stays with you where you can still kind of feel how someone's...
Yes. Yes, I still, that's always a battle. When you're empathic, you feel other people's feelings, and it's confusing.
It's got to be nerve-wracking, too, because if someone's nervous, you probably pick up or if they're sad, that's a tough one to absorb.
Well, a lot of times you will feel sad, and you're like, why am I sad? And you start, internalizing the feelings from someone else before you really realize that you're, just mirroring them.
You guys heard me talk about how incredible Corey looks, and he has gone through his own kind of ascension by doing inner work, high vibrational diet. What is this high vibrational diet? Obviously, it's no meat. Is it fish?
Well,
what is your
some
daily
people
routine look like?
are on high vibrational diets that include meat. Some, but you get to a point to where you don't want to eat anything that used to have a face.
Right.
You know, you don't want that karma. So yeah, it is. You know, like raw vegan is good, vegetarian is good, but it's mainly getting really high quality organic foods. You know, and you know, balance. You know, having a balance.
And do you have a vice still? Do you go like, okay, it's pizza night, I'm gonna just do it, or no, you stick to it?
I've pretty much transformed. I mean, I'm actually eating pizza on cauliflower crust. I can't believe it. You know, when I first started doing Cosmic Disclosure, I was eating like 4 corn dogs a day, and
right,
you know, you could see 4 corn dogs on my neck. You know, if you watch some of the shows.
And David, you've incorporated some healthier lifestyle.
My ET contact didn't, which I talk about in Awakening in the Dream, didn't really begin until I became vegan. I did vegan for 7 years, and I got very, very anemic, very depleted in B vitamins, and I was doing everything right.
It's hard.
A lot of people try to shame me and say, well, you know, you didn't do the superfoods. I did everything the way you're supposed to do it. So my physiology requires me to have animal products of some type.
Mine too. I tried it.
But what I try to do is I have what I call an ethical meat diet. I always try to go for, I want to flow my dollars into businesses that treat animals well.
Before they kill them.
Because
sorry, it's low-hanging fruit.
It was awesome. I get it.
I don't want to have a fight with him on the Jenny McCarthy Show. We'll do that later. But look, it does say in the Law of One that you can have animal products to the extent necessary for the upkeep of the physical body.
I get that, yep.
And so what I try to do is to keep it in alignment, and I don't use any type of factory farmed meat at all if I can possibly avoid it. And by investing in companies that are doing it right, it becomes something that's available to more people so that more animals are treated well. And that's the way I look at it.
Good for you. I think I have to be more in path with that because I've tried the vegan thing, and I have a histamine intolerance, which means I can't have rice, I can't have avocado. It's like all these wonderful things that are healthy. So I'm like, damn it, I have to do it.
Well, and veggie proteins usually are carb heavy, so you're going to gain a lot more weight.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's tough. It's a really tough thing to do.
It is a tough thing to do. I'm going to carry on with my selfish questions. Corey, you said in one of your talks that you interfaced with your dog. And I was like, I have to know about that experience.
That could go a lot of different ways. I mean,
yeah, let's explain that.
I love it.
Well, actually, it started back, my grandfather taught me how to do it. He was a Native American. He was a retired minister, but he's still, kept a lot of the Native ways. And he taught me, he had a little poodle named Casey, and he taught me to sit across the room and look at the dog and match their breath, match what we think their heartbeat is, and then try to visualize us, the dog looking at us, its perspective. And as you would do that, you would bilocate with the animal because we are all one. All consciousness is the same, it has the same root. And
and you're also part Cherokee.
Yeah.
So you have the Native American blood in you.
Yeah, but anyone can do it.
Right.
And you get to a point to where you feel bilocal, and then something happens with your consciousness and you get kind of scared and you disconnect.
Oh, wow.
I did it with a dolphin recently in Hawaii when we were on one of our events.
That's right. You said it was like a wild feeling in your brain.
It caught me off guard. It had a very high intelligence, but it felt very wild. And it stopped and it looked at me, and I tried to interface with it, and it sensed my fear, and it took off.
Wow. So anybody could be able to do this?
Anybody.
Because I sometimes think I know what my dog's thinking.
Practice.
And then I'm wrong because he goes to the bathroom in the other room. I do want to ask about why there is a veil over our higher selves. I know Law of One talks about that. I'm thinking to myself, why would we do that? Why would anyone do that to us?
So we can forget we're God and we're the one.
And go through life.
Why would we go through this crap if we knew that we were really divine beings?
Right.
Well, the Law of One has a great dissertation on this where they talk about in the beginning of the universe, the early galaxies, the early civilizations, people did not have a veil. And they were like spoiled rich kids lying around blissed out. Nobody wanted to help each other because everybody was just so happy. It was only once the veiling was created that we ended up having the desire to spiritually grow, the desire to reach out to each other, the desire to seek higher knowledge, higher truth. And that had the unanticipated consequence of also creating the possibility of evil, which did not exist before.
Right.
But evil is what inspires us to overcome whatever it's trying to enslave us in. And so it's allowed to exist. There's really cool stuff about that in Zoroastrianism, where the Zoroastrian evil Satan figure is basically authorized to be here because the game is already rigged and we know that we're going to prevail over this. It's all kind of like we're in a sandbox, and as long as we don't mess up the area outside the sandbox, we're allowed to play in here. People think if there's benevolent ETs, then why don't they come and help me out with my knee? I got a bad knee. Why don't they? Well, if there was a God, then they wouldn't allow my father to die because that was horrible. I cried so much. Look, the benevolent ETs will stop a nuclear war. They will stop the planet from being destroyed, in this case, because they missed out on the other one in our solar system. But they're never going to let that happen again. They're very careful now. But what they will do is they will allow us to learn from our own mistakes. So we had to learn how bad nuclear weapons are by having two very small ones go off, Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Mm-hmm.
But they're never going to let another one happen. They're never going to let everybody get wiped out by a virus or an economic collapse. They are keeping us so that we can learn within this classroom. That's a very important point.
They need us to ascend so they can.
Right.
That's right.
That's a really good way of talking about it. And with ascension, it's been interesting to listen to people talk about how they're like more worried about their pets than their family members.
I've heard that many times.
It's really interesting to me. So talk about that a little bit, and people that are concerned for, let's say, their kids who might not be, woke enough to understand right from wrong, or special needs kids.
I've been fielding those questions for 25 years. And basically, if you have a pet, the chances are that it is self-aware and it's going to come back as a human. It will graduate to be a human in its next life. Everybody will get where they need to go in this process, and your responsibility is to promote your own ascension, put on your own mask before assisting others, is how I would say it.
Right.
Most people are not going to be going into fourth density. Most people are going to be relocated to another planet, so they won't be faced with this choice. However,
or they'll reincarnate with our pets
that could be true too.
as co-humans.
By the way, that's probably what a lot of people will want.
Yeah.
Just to let you know. What do you mean Scruffy's leaving? I gotta go with him.
I've got a third density dog at home.
But also,
I
I was given very important information about that. Some people will be ascending, and then they will be able to come back in an ascended form to their relatives who have not yet ascended and give them inspiration and hope. That is part of what's going to happen. There will be waves of this. It doesn't happen all at once. So if you get the chance to ascend, you should do it, because then you'll be able to help others who haven't ascended yet.
And how to ascend is by doing, and let's go over the big message that you've received: loving others, serving others.
And the selfish part, the only way out is in. You have to focus on your dealing with karma from crap that you've done in your life, and also trauma. Trauma is one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest things holding people back from ascending or expanding their consciousness. Every little trauma you have a piece of your consciousness segmenting it and keeping it out of your consciousness.
Right.
So for each one, you're using a piece of your consciousness to segment it. When you deal with those traumas, it opens up your bandwidth.
Oh.
And all of the intuition begins to come back. All of these other fourth density type abilities you start getting a taste of and experiencing.
That's really exciting
It is.
to listen to.
Well, if you look at the Hebrew mysticism, they call us tikkun, the shattered vessels of light. And the idea in the Kabbalistic tradition is that you want to rebuild the vessel. You want to rebuild your armor of light, create a barrier so that people can't suck your energy, which means that you have to close all these holes in your auric field. those holes are tethered to specific traumatic memories that you have, which also have an address in your physical body. So when you go through somatic experiencing therapy, your therapist will ask you to tune into your body and find out where it hurts. And then the stream of consciousness memories that you start to have as you think about this pain on your arm, you'll realize, wow, my father hit me there. Okay, and now I'm remembering that.
Wow.
So as you go through this somatic cleansing where your body is healing, you're healing these memories which actually do carry a weight. They pull you down.
It's energy.
You're closing these wounds in your auric field, and then you can hold a greater intensity of light. So you have to build your light body through the diligent work on your trauma and healing from your past.
That's being more healthy.
Yes. And also what he was saying, each of those traumas, they're like energy. It's mass, energy in your body. And when this micronova occurs, you're going to have this expansion of electromagnetic fields and other energies that you need to pass through your body unencumbered. It's going to cause like a friction. It's going to run, and that's with traumas. But when we talk about the physical stuff, health, cleansing yourself, not having a lot of metals in your body.
I know, that scares me. I read somewhere that you can spontaneous combust.
Right, yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, you have to detox all those metals.
Probably the best religious ascension prophecies are in the Islamic Quran. It is amazing how much they talk about the ascension in the Quran. It's everywhere.
I can't believe how much you know, David.
It's
unbelievable. It's truly unbelievable. And you're right. You have a mind that just remembers everything.
If I'm interested, yeah.
I'm a pretty sharp guy, and sometimes it really pisses me off how he can just pull information. I don't know where it comes from.
It's crazy. But can you remember like your wife's favorite color and her favorite
we
things?
We never talked about what her favorite color is. I don't know.
He'll never know.
Really discussed that.
While I wrap this up, I want to plug all of your amazing work that you guys are doing. The Cosmic Secret, it's available to stream on Amazon Prime and Apple TV. It's a must-watch, you guys, The Cosmic Secret. And then, David, what is your book about so people go online and buy it right now?
Well, Awakening in the Dream is a handbook on how to analyze and understand your dreams. It is a very thorough recounting of the pyramid timeline. The Great Pyramid has built into the stone of its passageways a prophetic timeline that includes 9/11, the 2008 economic collapse, the Edward Snowden revelations of 2013, all that is in there, and Ascension. And it also went through a whole bunch of historic events that we can trace. Also, I am going to be starting my own network where I'm going to have shows once again, like weekly shows. Thank God we're finally at the point we can do that. And I'm also investigating multiple ways to do other network things as well that would have a higher production value than sort of like the homemade stuff.
Right. Good for you.
So we are definitely not defeated. My career is not over, as some people have tried to say online. It's just the opposite.
People say that every day to me, David.
Everybody says that.
If I would have listened to that, I'd be gone a long time ago.
There you go.
You're doing an amazing job.
Well, high five on that.
Right? High five on that. And then, Corey, talk about this amazing online class.
Yeah, acceleratingascension.com. I'm going to be talking about how to prepare for ascension. Taking the holistic route, all three, mind, body, spirit, how to make sure you're eating high vibe foods and you're clean, and keeping your psyche clear, and dealing with all of your karma and trauma, deliberately. And all of these, we're going to talk about all of these different methods that people can use. So
it's so smart, because after watching your years of work, I would always go like, well, teach us how to do this.
Right,
and then all of a sudden, boom, you came up with
and I want to just endorse this too by saying that I've looked at his comprehensive treatment of what's going to be in this class, and it is a massive download. I'm very proud of you for what you've come up with. I think it's divinely inspired, and you did get it downloaded to you. So
it was actually a person that I'm working with that is influenced by the Anshar. And together we kind of downloaded it, and it is amazing. I'm very proud of it.
And when does it start?
It's going to start at the end of March.
And people can still go online and purchase it right now. Yeah. Like I said, I'll be there, so you'll see me asking questions.
That's awesome.
Well, and you reminded me that I am doing Ascension Mystery School again this year. We might call it something else, yes.
Oh, I'm so glad.
That's very,
A lot of
big,
people really
yeah.
enjoyed that. It was a life-changing thing for me, and we're going to do that again soon this year. So everybody can be on the lookout for that as well. And it's going to be all new. I'm going to go through a lot of the stuff that's in the book before the book comes out, but I'm going to expand on it even more, so it'll be all new information.
That's great. So right before, you're going to come back here, and we're going to plug for that because I want to know more. And Corey, can you include in this course how to interface with your dog for me?
Yeah, I think maybe we'll touch on that.
I think it would be really fun and fascinating. That's something I want to learn. Corey Goode, David Wilcock, thank you so much for being brave, for being truth tellers, to coming on my show and sharing it with everybody. I appreciate it. I hope you come back.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We certainly will, Jenny.
And
Thank you.
happy almost birthday, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Big 5-0.
I know. You never looked better.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.